There is no joke. That's just Cyberpunk 2077. That is the real joke.
Game over, yeah!
Cyberpunk 2077, the newest game from CD Projekt Red, is finally out, and the road to get here was very weird. It was announced a long time ago, and when it finally got a release date, it got delayed, and delayed, and delayed, to the point most people started wondering if the game would ever come out in our mortal plane of existence, until finally the developers announced it went gold, thus calming our fears and assuring us everything was alright, before it got delayed again. This is not a joke. Right now I cannot remember a single other game in the history of gaming that went gold and got delayed again before release. All of this was, in a way, an extremely obvious sign that somewhere along the way something went horribly wrong with this game's development. And yet, we trusted CD Projekt Red. At least I trusted CD Projekt Red. I trusted them because even though they are big, unlike EA or Ubisoft, they have no reputation for greedy business practices. I trusted them because they trusted us by releasing one of the year's biggest titles completely DRM free on their store, and with them releasing new videos every day, including a current gen versus next gen comparison video, all the way up to the final, real launch date. There was reason to believe that even if the game was unpolished, it would still be something truly special. That at best, they would need a patch or two to sort out minor issues. And then the initial reports came out. And then the actual launch came out. And then here we are. Well, damn. I shall not mince words. This game is buggy. This game is really buggy and broken, and CD Projekt Red really pulled a fast one on its fans. It knew the game wasn't ready for a current gen release. It knew maybe they could pull it off on the next gen, though I doubt it, because even on a super turbo mega PC, it is buggy. It is damn buggy. And it's a damn shame that of all companies to do this, CD Projekt Red did this, because they simply have no history with this. You'd expect Ubisoft to do this, you'd expect EA to do this, you'd expect Bethesda to do this. Bethesda practically has a history with bugs. They are the bug company, and yet not even a single Bethesda game that came out, well, maybe probably Fallout 76, but before that, Skyrim, not even Skyrim or Fallout was as buggy as this. This is buggy, people. This is really buggy country. But while people are focused solely on the bugs, let me make another piece of my opinion clear. Let me be perfectly clear. In my opinion, Cyberpunk 2077 is not a diamond in the rough, waiting to be picked up and polished to become perfection. It is not a buggy game that needed a few more months to become the game of the year, or the decade, or a groundbreaking RPG, or whatever you expected of it. The developers have made decisions, game design decisions, not just rushing the game out decisions, that are deeply flawed, cracks in the gem that extend all the way to its inner core, and I have no doubt that I would not be satisfied with these decisions, even if I was delivered them in a better, more polished game. I believe this is because of a deep disagreement between me and the devs in what makes for a good RPG. But I digress. This has been a deeply negative opening, and things won't get better until they get worse, so let me clearly state how I'm going to split this particular video. I want to try to end this video on a particularly positive note, so let's start with the obvious and the bad, the buggy and the ugly, the things that I didn't like, and then let's go to the positive, because yes, there is a lot of positive stuff to talk about as well, and let's try to send off this mess in a positive light, hopeful for the future, though I don't have a crystal ball, so you have to forgive me for only being able to review the game that I own right now. The setting of Cyberpunk 2077 is, well, the United States of 2077, not our 2077, mind you. The game does make it pretty clear in a few sequences where it rewinds time back to the good old days of 2015 or so, that even 60 or so years ago, the world of Cyberpunk was already much more advanced technologically than our own. You play as V, a player-created character that can be male or female and that, after a job gone wrong, ends up with an anti-corporate rock and roll terrorist, Johnny Silverhand, played by Keanu Reeves, inside their heads. Only problem is, Johnny's personality brain chip thingy is slowly killing V's brain, so now it's up to the players to guide V through a series of dangerous missions in order to search for a way for V to survive. Now, right out of the gate, one thing must be made abundantly clear. The story of Cyberpunk 2077 is incredibly linear. There is little room for deviation story-wise. Your choices don't matter. They matter less than in a freaking Telltale game. You will always be guided through a linear set of story missions that might have some optional objectives in them, but regardless of how you play through them, they will always start and end the same way. Every character who has to live, lives. Every character who has to die, dies, with a single notable exception in the entire campaign, who ultimately changes nothing. When you reach the ending, you'll be given a choice of how you want to end the game based on the side quests you completed, and once you finish the game, you'll be thrown right back before the final mission, so if you completed all of the side quests, you can just sit through all of the 6 endings, see them all in a row, but if you didn't, no sweat, because you can just do the side quest and then come back to the final mission. There is no chance to fuck up, which is good, but at the same time it completely removes all consequences from all choices. You can choose anything that will lock you out of an ending, or choose something that will make an ending available, or even alter the available endings depending on your previous choices. You can see everything in a single go of the game, which makes it baffling when I saw people mentioning online that they couldn't wait to start another playthrough to get another ending and see how they could play a different V, because, well, maybe they are just too excited. I'm not saying that they are deliberately lying or malicious, but regardless of the person speaking, the statement itself, well, that's a statement that's just full of shit. Because not only can you see everything in a single playthrough, you probably will want to see everything. Because while I'd argue Cyberpunk 2077 has the innate replayability potential that every game has, in the sense that if you like it, it is worth replaying, the choices add absolutely no replay value to the game at all. Meaning, if all you care about is seeing how the story branches out, you can do it once in one playthrough and see absolutely everything. Which brings me to my next point, which is the one that deeply upsets me. So feel free to write off this next segment as the rambling of an old man, but holy fuck is the dialogue system of this game one of the most depressing cases of missed potential ever made. It is absolutely bare bones and makes it impossible to roleplay a character in any way, shape or form. The lack of options is absurd and there is no way for you to truly create a character in this world thanks to this absolutely fucking terrible dialogue system. Take for example, the life paths. At the beginning of the game, the player can choose their V to start their path either as a nomad, as a street kid, or as a corpo. Here's the thing, it doesn't fucking matter. Regardless of the life path you choose, you only play a small 20-minute opening segment for that path before a half a year time skip 30-second montage plays out in which V becomes a small time merc in Night City. What happens in those 20 minutes doesn't matter at all. There are no choices in there, and you get an entire new life and characters that you don't know attached to you in those 30 seconds that makes things needlessly confusing. Especially since the game already established itself much more slowly and clearly in what kind of life V was living during the life path intro, if only because that is 20 minutes instead of 30 seconds. After all of that, you get quite a few dialogue choices during the game based on the life path you chose, but here's the catch. Like every other choice in the game, they don't fucking matter. You can't avoid conflict, get into conflict, or even get a discount at a shop depending on your life path. The worst thing is, life paths were part of the reason I believed in the game's dialogue system during the early previews. Seeing choices appear depending on life path, but not if you're not in that life path, gave me hope that the dialogue system was actually filled with options. The developers just chose to hide them if you couldn't access them, for the sake of more immersion, let us say. Well, That was a huge fucking delusion of my part. Yes, the dialogue system matters even less than the life paths. Every single dialogue prompt is either yes, as a douchebag, or yes, as a slightly bigger douchebag. That's right, they couldn't even bother to take the Mass Effect route of good cop option, bad cop option. V's personality is decided from the start, and male or female, every option makes you feel like you're playing as a generic 90s action tough guy with no real personality. And no, not even the macho ones or the funny ones either, because that would actually be interesting. No, you play as the really boring ones that copy themselves from better movies without knowing what made them good in the first place. And when you get two options, oh, that's fantastic, because you often only get a single option that follows the dialogue, and maybe one or two other options that you can use to extract more information about the lore before you go on, so essentially you only get one option. Fuck! I thought we left this single option that continues the story and multiple ones that just spout exposition bullshit 10 years ago, but I guess not. And that is not even the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario is when the game has the absolute balls to give you a single dialogue option. A single dialogue. At this point, why even fucking bother? V goes around spouting a bunch of dialogue without prompts anyway, so why even bother pretending this game even deserves to have a dialogue system? Your game is buggy, man. Why did you even bother to develop a dialogue system? And of course, the life path thing is a trap to give you the impression that something you did matters. Yet of course it doesn't, because when so many dialogue prompts are only two options, one generic one and one for your life path, of course you're always going to pick the life path option, because otherwise you'll be going for the most generic route available, which doesn't get the bang for the mental buck you want from picking a life path at the start. So of course it's not even a real choice. Of course you're going to pick the life path choice. At no point I was met with any moral decision that made me think I shouldn't use my life path's knowledge, or throw into a situation with an opposing faction where I would lose my advantage if I revealed my origins. There was simply no moment in the entire game where I had to think about what I was picking. So whatever, let's always pick the life path option. Why wouldn't I? The irony of this entire thing being, of course, that because no one wants to be an even more generic guy than they already are, chances are the generic options are going to be the least picked ones in the end, and the most generic will become the least of them. Oh well. And of course, all of this means that V is one of the worst video game protagonists of recent years. Not cool enough to be memorable, not enough of a prick to be hated, not even enough of a blank slate to self-insert into, just mildly annoying and the least colorful of all of the characters in the entire game. And of course, the dialogue is also filled with the classic glass hand moments. For those who don't know what I'm talking about, is when you pick a dialogue option, but it turns out way different from what you expected, usually with little context. I'll even give you an example. At the beginning of the game, before the title screen even shows up, V goes to a Ripper Doc, a sort of cyborg surgeon, to get some new implants. In there, I got the dialogue option to compare him to a dentist. Since V is on a chair that looks like a dentist's chair and everything, I thought V would playfully joke about that with his longtime buddy. Instead, he goes on this long tirade criticizing the doctor, talking about how boring he is explaining things and to just do the thing already. And holy shit, was that a dick move. Maybe that's the writer's idea of a tough guy joke. Maybe they just wanted to give V a tough guy vibe. But to me, they just made V an unlikable, cocky asshole, and that's unfortunately the vibe that you have to deal with for most of the game. And that's just the normal dialogue style of the game. When the game gets really buggy, it can't even properly track what is happening. You get Keanu Reeves in your head trying to kill you in 1 second, and then you start a side quest where you get hit in a car, and then Keanu shows up in the passenger seat and it's all like, whoa man, did you see that? Yeah, that was crazy, and you act like complete buddies. In one main story mission, I had the option to kill a character and I killed him, and then in a side quest for another character, the character that I killed was still alive and I got to kill him again. Like, the game can't even properly keep track of what is happening in its world. But I'm not here just to whine. especially since I guess I just went on a long tirade myself, I guess. So before we leave this train wreck of a dialogue system behind us forever for the rest of our lives, let us give some practical examples of how the dialogue system could be improved based on very real games that are already out. I call them the Neo Persona style and the New Vegas style because I can't call it the Fallout style since I didn't play the old Fallout games and the new ones kind of wrecked everything, so should it become... Shut up, okay, it's the New Vegas style now. The Neo Persona style refers to Persona 3, 4, and 5, all JRPG games with a blank slate protagonist where you make choices regularly. Thing is, outside of a few key choices, usually near the end, they change nothing about the main story of the game. Sounds similar to Cyberpunk, right? Well, here's where it gets interesting, because Persona's true strength in all of this is regarding its, let us say, peculiar writing choices, not its technical capabilities. Meaning, the protagonist doesn't talk. He, or sometimes she, does not have a voice. Though they also get 2 or 3 dialogue choices per prompt, just like Cyberpunk, they are all reasonable, subdued, almost neutral responses that all advance the dialogue instead of holding you back for exposition. You see, what happens with Persona is that the main character is so bland, yet constantly participates in conversation, that your brain can fill the blanks with whatever personality you want and it will fit him. Sure, he says he likes coffee or green tea, and that might even be the trigger that changes the ending or what girlfriend he ends up with, but in the end, he doesn't have his own voice to elaborate on why he likes coffee or why Aegis is so clearly the best girl. He doesn't have an overwrought dialogue where he explains it all in conflict with the image the player has of him in their head. Instead, he just shuts the fuck up and lets you do the math. And that, in my opinion, is the path of least effort Cyberpunk could have taken to deliver better role-playing dialogue. Now, the second path, and the one that takes more work, is the New Vegas style. Because you see, in this style, every dialogue has a bajillion options, and you sit the fuck down and you do the hard work to write and code in all the bajillion options like a damn developer should. Of course, it's not enough to just have a bajillion options, you must also make it so that different options require different skills, so players with different sets of skills can solve problems in different ways, which may or may not lead to extra dialogue, extra battles, or extra loot. Just different choices without those requirements are worthless and makes the entire affair feels superficial compared to the parts of the game where those skills are actually useful. Of course, the New Vegas developers weren't some godlike beings from another dimension, they too had limitations like everybody else. The main one being that while each individual quest could be big and full of branches and ways to end from a single start, they couldn't take into account the ending of every quest into the whole game. Sure, there could be choices in some quests that could lead to other quests or that some characters would comment on later on, and there are some big choices that can fail quests or completely change the ending, but you can't just do that for every single quest in the game. It would be simply inhumane to write and code all of that. So instead, the guarantee that they gave you was that each quest was at least its own individual playground. But let's say if you had to get an orange to continue the main quest, then it didn't matter if you killed the entire town or saved the space ducks to get the orange, in the end you would have it, so the story could continue, or if the developers were feeling particularly cheeky that day, you could travel all the way to your destination only to find an orange right next to the gate to the destination. Only it is locked behind another gate that needs a level 19 picklock skill to open, but hey, if you were dumb enough to invest on that, at least you could completely skip the previous quest. And you know, having these bottlenecks at certain points, it's fair game, you just can't bottleneck your entire game because at that point it's just linear. And mechanics wise, aside from some big choices that might kill some characters that might completely invalidate or create ending options, the consequences might seem a bit small. Some people might acknowledge what you did somewhere down the line, but most of the time, all you got was positive or negative karma and or positive or negative reputation with the factions involved, and dialogue based on that reputation number rather than any and all individual actions, which, you know what, fuck saying that was mal. That was a whole lot more than what we got in Cyberpunk 2077. Here, we just get constantly increasing street cred that unlocks new linear side quests. New Vega's simple number tracking of a few values created a much better world. Imagine if we could befriend gangs in Cyberpunk and get additional side quests based on that, or if nearby gang members of a friendly gang assisted during combat if we engage into combat while they were hanging out nearby. Just imagine all of the cool shit we could have gotten if they actually took that shit into account. But I'm getting sidetracked right now. Let's go back to dialogue choices and story choices, because there is a third path that I didn't mention so far that Cyberpunk 2077 could have taken. Cyberpunk 2077 could have just completely abandoned dialogue and did like so many other games and just gave us a fully fledged character with no choices. It's not like other games with character customization and fixed personalities do not exist, and they can work very well, as anyone who played the Saints Row series can attest to. The problem is, Cyberpunk 2077 does not even give the illusion your choices matter. I wish I could easily pinpoint why the developers took this path by doing something like simply pointing you towards Geralt of Rivia and said that they tried to write a Geralt when they really needed a courier, but that would be an insult to Geralt, because even when I was playing as him, as a well-defined character allowed only to make choices within the framework of this real person called Geralt, I still felt like I had more freedom to make more decisions than here. I still felt more personally attached to Geralt through the little I could do within his existing personality than I did for V during the entirety of Cyberpunk. So yeah, this is just plain bad planning and writing. Damn this shitty character and this shitty dialogue system. Gosh darn it out to heck. Okay, but let's move on. If there's another negative point that people want to talk about, and maybe they want me to talk about it, I don't know, it's definitely the bugs. And make no mistake, this game is buggy. This is not small indie studio Eurojank buggy, this is not even Bethesda buggy, this is by far the buggiest games with the buggiest bugs I've ever played in recent years. In those games, things occasionally bug out. In those games, a certain combination of actions is required for the game to bug out. But in Cyberpunk 2077, all you need to do is walk out of your apartment and within minutes, cars will fly, people will disappear, and the police will instantaneously spawn right next to you the moment you accidentally graze a civilian. You don't go out looking for bugs in Cyberpunk, the bugs come out looking for you. And while for some people this ruins the immersion of the game, for me finding an enemy T-posing is merely funny, and I honestly don't care too much about that. What I do care too much about are the game-breaking bugs that can halt your progress. Within the first 3 hours, I had to restart the game 5 times because it didn't recognize I completed an objective and spawned the characters needed for the next one. At one point during the climax of the prologue, I had to steal a badge from a security guard to access an elevator. Only he spawned inside the elevator and constantly flickered in and out of existence above and below the current floor, probably because the game couldn't correctly calculate his coordinates when he came to the current floor using that very same elevator. Thankfully, the doors were open and I was able to shoot his ghostly form until he died and drop the card. But there was a bug that could have potentially ruined my whole run. And that's when the fun stops. My personal recommendation? Save often, save a lot, in multiple slots. I had 30 different manual saves plus the auto saves when I finished the game, and even that might have been too little. But you should at least do the same if you don't want to get stuck in a broken mission. At least, thankfully, I didn't run into any save corruption issues, so if you save at a safe place, that save should be safe forever, in theory, I hope. And that's it for the bad parts of the game. I did say we would end in a positive note, didn't I? So now let's focus on the more positive aspects of the game. Let's start with the game world. Night City is a fully realized, unique setting. Today's open worlds have, like most things, a tendency to be kind of boring and generic in execution. It's either a modern day shooty America or a generic fantasy setting. Even when they break away from that, it's still mostly trees, deserts, or snowy plains, places where things can be easily copied and pasted without needing too much attention since, well, there's only so many ways a tree can look like anyway. My last favorite original open world games in terms of both visuals and traversal were the worlds of Gravity Rush 1 and 2. But I think they have some solid competition in the world of Night City. While you do traverse Night City mostly by car, going around by foot will soon reveal alleyways, street markets, hidden elevators, and shacks that might be full of treasure or a potential small side quest tucked away. The looks of the mega buildings aiming for the sky is both awe-inspiring and kind of terrifying. In fact, that is a feeling Night City gives you pretty often. One moment I distinctly remember was when I looked at the sky during the night and saw for the first time the giant holographic ads that seemingly reached cloud height. On one hand, they look beautiful, but on the other, they are just ads and they only go so far up because in a city filled with so many impossibly huge structures, that is basically the only way to effectively advertise in it. And like I said, I felt equal parts inspired by the human ingenuity of it and repulsed by the usage and need of such ingenuity in the first place. In terms of graphics, it looks pretty good, but unfortunately it suffers from poor optimization that leads to some weird bottlenecks. I played it with ray tracing on because of course I want to put my brand new RTX 3070 to use, and according to CD Projekt Red's own requirements chart, my PC should have been able to run the game easily at ultra with ray tracing on in wonderful 1440p, yet even though I'm a 1080p gamer, the game still just couldn't hit 60 FPS ever. It kept hovering at 55 at best and dipped into the low 20s at worst. This really desperately needs a performance patch because when the frame rate is stable, it is a pretty good looking game. Gameplay-wise, the game doesn't disappoint either. The combat feels satisfyingly crunchy with a surprising amount of mods and options available at your disposal. When you use a handgun, for example, it can be a pistol or a revolver, it can be a tech weapon which can charge attacks, or a power weapon which allows you to ricochet shots. The weapons can also be smart, which allows you to connect it to your eye implants, allowing you to see the trajectory of the bullets, including the trajectory of ricocheting bullets, provided of course you have the necessary implants. At the end of the day, you're still just shooting bullets at the bad guys, but using your strategically composed loadouts of lead instead of just normal lead can be pretty fun, and it really adds to the cyberpunk flair of customizing everything from your weapons to your own body. Unfortunately though, there are no real crazy weapons. You only get the basic handguns, automatic rifles, shotguns, sniper rifles and grenades. And I didn't manage to find a single gun that could shoot bullets that could turn a corner or energy blasts, and the melee is functional but equally uninspired, allowing you to attack, block or charge an attack that can break an enemy's block. Also dodge, but dodging is actually kind of a bother to normal gameplay since you do it by pressing quickly direction button twice, which is more liable to make you screw up your stealth than to actually dodge something. Still, it's nice that even the worst parts of combat are solid and not outright bad, and the modification all around is pretty cool and actually useful. Instead of just giving something like 2% extra jump height, they actually give things that you would want, like extra damage or elemental damage, which, you know, pretty standard stuff but at least useful stuff. And you actually get gorilla arm implants. You can actually get some gorilla arm implants that make you punch like a truck, and then install a mod of them that changes the damage to heat damage, so you can go around fire punching people, and that part's great. And speaking of implants, let's talk about the cyberware, which are basically, well, body implants that you can get at Ripper Dots. You can augment your vision implants so they can carry more mods. You can get a second wind implant that resurrects you upon death. You can get subdermal armor to get a higher armor rating. And my favorite, you can directly upgrade the cyber deck inside your head so you can get more RAM, more slots for hacking skills, and even other innate abilities. You can only get new implants at a Ripper dock, but you can install mods anywhere on the fly so long as you have the slots for it. And the reason I love the cyber deck so much is of course because I love this game's implementation of hacking. Hacking works like this. At any point in the game, you can activate your scanner, which is essentially hacker vision, allowing you to instantly track everything with cybernetics in it in your field of vision, and of course, hack them, if you have the hacking skills necessary for it. In many games, hacking can be limited by items or severely limited to hacking a computer station or maybe a turret or another device if you can get close enough, but in Cyberpunk 2077, everything is connected to the internet apparently. There isn't a single enemy, a single TV screen, or even a single boss battle that cannot be hacked. And that is amazing and makes hacking into Cyberpunk's 2077's own version of magic. You start off with some basic skills that allow you to electrocute enemies for a fixed amount of damage, which is essentially the Cyberpunk version of a basic magic projectile, and you can also hack nearby devices to activate them in order to distract enemies. And as you advance through the game, you'll be able to shut off turrets or convert them to your side. You'll also be able to do the same to security cameras, and on the enemy side, there is a veritable feast of options. You can blind them and wipe their memories for stealth purposes, you can shut down their implants, so you deactivate their special skills, you can weaken them before shooting them, or make them commit suicide, or set off their grenades, or even my personal favorite of them all, you can overload their circuits and set them on fire. It's pretty grand stuff. On the device side, things aren't all that interesting. You can jack into devices and bring up a hacking minigame, which can be solved in multiple ways, all giving cash rewards along with unlocking the terminals that you are currently hacking, with the hardest solution giving a bigger cash reward. And when you hack into it, sometimes you can shut down security if they are connected to a security system, but that's it really. The hacking minigame also shows up during combat, since you can hack your enemies with it as well in order to lower the RAM cost of using your hacking skills on them, because hacking, you see, is limited by the amount of RAM you currently have, which is kind of like a mana bar that constantly regenerates as time passes. My personal character build was a shooter focused on handguns, but on the side I also upgraded my hacking skills quite a lot, so I could open battles by hacking enemies and setting them on fire or electrocuting them before finishing them off with my gun, or vice versa. And the chaos of switching between shooting and hacking constantly, setting people on fire to get them out from behind their cover so I could headshot them, was immediately satisfying. I imagine straight shooting might get boring and just hacking might make you a sitting duck for extended periods of time while you wait for your RAM to reload, so I figured this made for a pretty fun style, and I recommend you try it out if you end up playing 2077. Now, as for character builds, the game has a pretty neat hands-off style to its level up system. Basically, your character has access to 5 attributes. Every time your V levels up, they gain 1 attribute point that they can distribute to any attribute, which levels up the stats related to that attribute. For example, leveling up body will give you more health and stamina. However, that's not where the fun stops, because under every attribute there are at least 2 categories, and each category has a list of perks associated with it that you can level up with perk points that you get when you level up V or when you level up a specific category by using it a lot, like for example the handgun category. It's under the reflexes attribute. Use handguns a lot and you get small bonuses to handguns and extra perk points. Now, a way to go about that would be to have the skills in a skill tree, but in Cyberpunk 2077, the perks you can get are associated with the attribute their category belongs to. So for example, in order to get stronger handgun perks available, you need to put more points in reflexes, and the higher your reflexes, the more handgun perks you get access to. It's simple. It's a free pick whatever you want system that's really great because stronger perks do not require you to traverse a branch of a skill tree of weaker perks first. You can just mix and match whatever you want, which creates a wider range of possible builds, and more importantly, just doesn't give you too much of a hassle to figure out how to get what you want out of a character build. It's just unfortunate that most perks don't give you wild skills or interesting passives. That is mostly up to the cyberware and hacking skills that you find around the world. So instead, most perks are buffs that you can apply to your current character. Not that you can't get creative with them to break the game. For example, I focus on handguns since despite their seemingly weakness compared to higher grade firearms, they have a perk that increases their damage up to 30%, another that increases critical damage with headshots, another that increases damage if the character is more than 5 meters away from the enemy shooting at, and yet another that negated the damage penalty you get from firing from far away. This meant essentially that I could easily annihilate everything in my way, so long as I was sufficiently far away from them. That's ridiculous and great at the same time, and it's one example of how you can game the perk system that showcases why I love this hassle-free kind of upgrade selection so much. Now, I have nothing against skill trees, especially when they are trees that do all kinds of cool shit, like branches intersecting on each other, or you can kind of spin them around to change what you can get. But this is pretty cool on its own right, and it's 100% better than when a game has completely linear trees that force you into the playstyle the developers want you to get from the get-go. Level design wise, that's when Cyberpunk 2077 falters a bit. I know I said the open world is good when I'm talking about mission level design, and I know that I said I would leave all the negative stuff behind at the start, but this is less of a negative and more like an all over the place kind of thing. Some missions are fairly open, reminding me of good old Deus Ex, and if you have a sufficiently upgraded attribute, you can do all sorts of things, like a high enough body attribute allows you to force open doors that don't have technical devices attached to them. For that you need to have high technical ability. High intelligence will allow you to hack lockpads and security systems, and having an implant on your legs allows you to jump higher or double jump through obstacles, and if all fails you always have a vent or a window or some sort of other way of sneaking around. Giving multiple ways to traverse the environment and engage with enemies is one of the strengths of RPGs that most other genres struggle to do. And while it's wonderful that Cyberpunk 2077 gives you all of these options, at the same time you can't really do something like stack a bunch of boxes to get over a fence or snipe the enemy you're supposed to kill from far away to stop a chase sequence from the beginning. Basically what I'm trying to say is, different options are wonderful, but they are still linearly placed by the developers and there is no sense of sandbox freedom that you are solving a problem using your own wits, you are merely following different trails of breadcrumbs. Not to say that linearity is bad. One of my favorite missions in the entire game has you sneak through high-rises in the middle of a parade, hiding in the dark corners and taking out snipers, while the holograms of the parade fail to completely light up the dark rooms and rooftops you climb through, eventually ending in a boss battle against an enemy in a demon mask with cyber blades on each arm, and that's just the kind of thing that looks like it could have come straight out of a Ghost in the Shell movie or something. And like the huge kids dork that I am, I couldn't help but smile at the clear inspiration for the mission and how cool it all played out. Had this been a more linear game overall, or maybe one with less RPG elements, perhaps I would have accepted the mission quietly as a great moment and nothing more, but at the same time, I feel like I need to acknowledge the waste of potential here. The corners, the corridors, they are simply too tight. Regardless of or if you sneak or if you shoot, you need to take a series of guards linearly. The only difference is if they see you coming or not. And ultimately, you can't talk the boss out of the battle or complete some optional objectives to make the fight easier, or just use an exploit to get out of it altogether. No, there is no such option. His health bar shows up and it's shooty time. And that's frankly just a waste of potential. And that's what's so frustrating about Cyberpunk 2077. They have the attributes, they let you equip gear, they let you pick your weapons, they have perks, they have cyberware, they have different vehicles, they have hacking skills, they have a million different things you can interact with that could serve to open the gate for a million different playstyles, but instead it is all bottlenecked by the linearity of it all, and all of that makes all of the work you put into getting skills and modding your gear honestly feel like a waste of time. Especially since the gear you find and the gear you can buy scales up with your level, so you might as well just pick what you find from the enemies you kill and move on. It's not like it will make any difference. I still stand that the freedom in the skill trees of the perks allows for some interesting mix and matches, but there's absolutely no doubt that even then, they are still just buffs that get bottlenecked by the linearity of the level design, and that's just unfortunate. Well, that veered dangerously close to negative back there, maybe straight into negative realm. So let me state my final conclusion then. Let's go back to the Deus Ex comparison, because the too long didn't watch summary is that Cyberpunk 2077 isn't future GTA, it isn't future Witcher 3 either, and it sure as fuck isn't future New Vegas. Cyberpunk 2077 is Deus Ex. But while Deus Ex had smaller missions so they could pack more options into each individual one, Cyberpunk 2077 opted to go the full open world route, making it impossible to have as much density as Deus Ex did, even though it does have all of the RPG systems necessary to support that, and in the end ended up as just a poor man's Deus Ex. Not that this is necessarily a bad thing, I enjoyed it. Even after everything, I still took some enjoyment out of it, because even as a poor man's Deus Ex, it is still Deus Ex. But given the pedigree behind it, I gotta say I expected more. This could have been the open world Deus Ex. This could have been future New Vegas if the devs wanted to, but they didn't, and so it isn't. And given how far away the next Deus Ex is thanks to Square Enix's incompetence, this might just hit the spot if you lower your standards. But unfortunately, for all the work put into it and all those horrible crunch hours that the developers had to suffer, it will never be one of the greats. At least for me personally. And in January or February or whenever the fuck they manage to iron out the bugs, it still won't be, because what's wrong with Cyberpunk runs deeper on the more fundamental level of game design. It is a game pretending to be deeper than it is, and in that sense, it should have been delayed. Not 1 or 2 months, but maybe entire years away, so that they could rework all of it into a cohesive whole. The problem isn't polish, it's depth. And CD Projekt Red, please play something other than the Witcher games you made yourselves. The world deserves your writing style and your general style in a game with actual gameplay depth. Or maybe they don't, I mean deserve is a strong word, but you know what I mean, people would appreciate it. And you could bring entire new generations of people who play video games into, knowing what Deus Ex feels like, because apparently everybody forgot about it. I don't know. Was mankind divided that long ago? Am I growing that old? Why aren't people mentioning that in New Vegas anymore? Are they just not relevant anymore? They were like some of the last games that ever had true depth in them. What the hell is going on here? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. Well, as always, if you didn't like this opinion, please dislike, hate comment, call the FBI and the CIA and the NSA and all of the other American agencies. I'm not from the United States anyway, ha! And stick around for more shitty opinions. This is Penguin Overdrive, signing off. Oops, we're not done yet. Hello everyone, I'm currently recording this on Christmas Eve because I wanted to record this bonus unscripted part to the video, and it's going to be unscripted, so I'm sorry if things get off the rail and I start going and I stop doing stuff because I'm thinking about what I'm trying to say. It's completely unscripted. And this is just a final bonus. You don't have to watch this if you don't want to. I express myself very well, but I just couldn't let this go. I found this slide. This slide I found after I edited everything else in the video, and I ended up screwing up a part of the video and I had to re-edit everything. This is why it's taken so long to finish this damn thing, because I fucked up midway, but I'm finally done with it, and then I found this. And you know what? This is great, because now people can't say, oh, but you were expecting too much, or the developers never promised that they would deliver this, because this is straight up a slide from a conference of theirs that says, our promise. This is what they wanted to do at the start, and obviously plans change and we shouldn't be too harsh on them, but I still want to look at this because I'm an asshole. I'm that kind of person who likes to go back all the way and see how it all began and what could have been, and shove in everybody's faces how bad things are and how good they could have been. God, I'm such a bad person. But anyway, let's take a look at this slide. I really like this slide because it has 6 different parts, as you can see, and we are going to go through them one by one. Okay, the first thing they promise is a mature RPG for mature up audiences, realistic and brutal, set in a rich futuristic world. Now, it will depend on your vision of what you think mature is. If there's a bunch of fireworks in the background, it's because it's Christmas freaking Eve and everybody's really festive, surprisingly festive considering the way things have been going this year, but just ignore the people screaming and the fireworks. I swear it's not an alien invasion or anything. But anyway, back to the topic. Mature RPG for mature audiences, realistic and brutal, set in a rich futuristic world. And it depends on what you think is mature, or realistic, or brutal. It's not realistic at all, but I understand what they wanted, and I think they really delivered it. The world is fantastic. But then we get to the second point, and it's like, gripping, non-linear story filled with life and detail. Well, as I just explained for like 25 minutes, or no, it's not non-linear at all. It's completely just, fuck, it's really linear. It's the complete opposite. Holy shit, did they fuck up this part? Okay, the third point is the advanced RPG mechanics based on pen and paper RPG system. And as I said, I praised the systems that led me to have fun with the combat itself, but it's up to you if you think they are advanced or not, because a bunch of buffs and stuff compared to, like, say, traits of Fallout New Vegas and stuff, yeah, it's way less interesting. But it's clear that they wanted to open up space for crazy abilities with cyberware that they kind of didn't deliver much on. But yeah, I think I'm going to count that as a failed. Now, the fourth is a varied selection of different character classes. And holy shit, fuck. This is just swearing, isn't it? Because this wasn't like... No, this was not delivered at all. Like, they didn't even try. Like, different character classes, like what? Like in the pen and paper one? Like when you had rocker boys and solos and medias and stuff, and you could join factions, I think, because it's a pen and paper RPG, of course, you can do a lot of things. But come on, no, the life paths aren't classes. There are no classes. There are nothing. And it's up to you if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Because, like, Dark Souls has a beginning class, but you can build your character into anything you want. And that system is great. And I think they could have gone for this system. But, yeah. It's up to you whether it's a good thing that they ended up not doing this. But maybe with different character classes, it could have been a more interesting game, a more replayable one, because the class kind of limits you and you want to see what other classes can do. Maybe, I don't know, man. Not delivered. And the 5 is the gigantic arsenal of weapons, upgrades, implants, and cool high-tech toys. And that was delivered with the giant asterisk that the weapons are all very basic weapon types, and it's only gigantic because it follows the Borderlands sort of style where they randomly generate weapons and stats in the weapons, so you keep changing them. And it's not bad, but it's less impressive than it sounds. But I suppose they delivered on that. And the 6 is set new standard in the futuristic RPG genre with an exceptional gaming experience. Yeah, no, yes, I'm saying no a lot, but that's just not what happened. It's the complete opposite of what happened. I think Cyberpunk might have single-handedly killed interest in futuristic RPGs for a while. Like, everybody's just gonna look at that and is like, is that like Cyberpunk? No, I'm gonna go back to the Tolkien classic medieval style, because no, I don't want anything futuristic. I'm out. Or maybe not, maybe I'm just exaggerating, But it's funny to think that Cyberpunk might have completely killed interest in an entire genre by being completely bug-filled and fucked up. But one thing's for sure, it set no new standards. So, promise broken. And to make things even more like... Is there a car outside? Yeah, it's a car outside, whatever. But to make things even more, insidious... No, that's not the word I'm looking for, but, in terms of this setting new standards stuff, it might have set new standards in bugs, because I just found out that if you get a bunch of items and you complete too many quests, you start gathering too much information in your save data, and if your save data exceeds 8 megabytes, it corrupts itself, and you just can't play anymore. They literally sent advice to people that said, don't play your game too much because it's going to break, and we might fix that. And that was like the worst, because we might fix that. Holy shit. But eventually, basically, they fixed it. as I'm sending this review out right now on Christmas Eve, yesterday they got a new hotfix, a new patch hotfix that fixed that problem. So good on that. Good on that. But it was kind of fucked up to think that you could have gotten a corrupted save from enjoying it too much. Like, there's so many people already mad at you for your game. Antagonizing the people that already left. Well, it's not like it was a conscious decision to them to antagonize people, you know. But leaving something that big, did nobody play the game that much to see how well it went? I remember seeing testers or journalists or something having like 120 hours in this game. Did none of them reach this limit? Like, it's weird to think about what's going on with this game bug-wise. But anyway, this was an extra part where I really analyzed this light, because this light is basic. I didn't know of this existence until now. If I knew, I would have been even harsher on the game, because this light, despite being sort of vague, kind of describes what I wanted out of Cyberpunk that I didn't really get out of Cyberpunk. But you know, what's promised, it's never going to be completely delivered. It's part of reality, but they missed the mark completely with this. But it's still a fine game. It's a fine game. Buy it on sale. I think it's cool. It just didn't meet the high expectations set by the people who made it. Well, that's it for this. God, this is almost 10 minutes long. Who is going to hear this? Nobody's even going to bother hearing this part. It's way too messy and unscripted. But anyway, thanks for staying 10 more minutes with me, analyzing disappointment in the form of a slide. And Merry Christmas. I didn't expect this to be my last video this year, but I suppose this is how it's going to end. There's going to be more videos next year. Hopefully smaller videos as I play shorter games, because I've been playing too many long games lately. I've been playing too many gripping, you gotta play 20, 30, 40 hours of it. I kind of want to relax with just the 5 to 10 hour games from now on. Not forever, but you know, for a while, and hopefully put out some more videos. And thanks for watching this to the very end. Thanks for staying with me throughout this year. And let's hope that next year YouTube doesn't fucking explode and the world doesn't die of corona, so I can keep talking about video games and you guys can keep enjoying my videos. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year and Merry Holidays and everything, you know. Just have a nice time. I hope you guys have a good time. That's it, I think. Is there anything else? No? Okay. I'm gonna go shove some Christmas turkey down my throat. Yeah. Yep. See you guys later.